From Grandpa's recipes to a global table, a family's journey of love, loss, and legacy. Claire tightened her scarf against the brisk October wind as she stepped out of her car. The driveway of her grandparents' house was littered with fallen leaves, the maple trees casting long shadows in the late afternoon light. The house loomed ahead, its windows glinting like old eyes. It had been a year since Grandpa Art had passed, and nearly 3 since Grandma May's gentle laugh had last filled these halls. Clearing out the house was a task no one wanted, but Claire's mother had insisted. "It's time, Claire. The memories aren't in the house, they're in us." Still, stepping inside felt like crossing into sacred ground. The attic was the last place Claire wanted to be. Dust motes floated in the narrow beam of her flashlight, and the air smelled of mothballs and thyme. She dug through box after box, muttering to herself, "Who even keeps old newspapers?" Just as she was about to give up, she spotted a small trunk wedged behind a pile of faded Christmas decorations. It was unassuming, its leather straps cracked and its brass lock barely holding on. She hauled it out, curiosity outweighing the effort, and flipped open the lid. Inside was a time capsule of her grandparents' life. Old photographs with curled edges, May's recipe cards, a bundle of letters tied with string. At the very bottom was a leather-bound book, worn from years of handling. Claire opened it to the first page and froze. Grandpa's recipes for the family that brings them to life. Her heart twisted. Memories of her childhood filled her mind. Grandpa humming Sinatra while stirring a bubbling pot, his stern but playful warnings to keep those fingers out of the cookie dough, and the way the entire family would light up when dinner was ready. This book wasn't just recipes. It was a piece of Grandpa himself. Back in the kitchen, Claire placed the book on the table where so many family meals had been shared. Her mom walked in, wiping her hands on a towel. "Find anything interesting?" she asked. Claire slid the book across the table. Her mom froze, her eyes widening as she picked it up. "Oh my God." Her voice wavered. "I thought this was gone. He used to keep it in the pantry, remember?" Claire nodded. "It's like holding him in my hands." They flipped through the pages together, laughing at Grandpa's quirky notes. "Don't skimp on butter. Life's too short for margarine." "Ben always picks out the mushrooms. Maybe hide them this time." "Emily loves this one. Extra marshmallows in her hot chocolate." Her mom's laugh faded into a sigh. "You know, we haven't had a meal together like we used to. Not since." She trailed off. Claire knew what she meant. After their grandparents passed, the family drifted. Ben buried himself in his corporate job in Manhattan, Emily got caught up in college life, and even Claire, living just a few towns over, felt the growing gaps between them. That night, as Claire lay in her childhood bed, staring at the ceiling, she made a decision. It was time to bring everyone back together. Claire started with Ben. She called him during his lunch break, the sound of honking cars and office chatter buzzing in the background. "Let me guess," Ben said, his tone dry. "Mom's roped you into cleaning out the house." "Actually, I found something," Claire said, launching into the story of Grandpa's recipe book. "That's nice," Ben said after a pause. "Nice? Ben, it's more than that. We should cook something from it, together." Ben sighed. "Claire, I'm swamped. I've got back-to-back meetings all week." "It doesn't have to be perfect," Claire interrupted. "Just one night. For Grandpa." The line went quiet for a moment before Ben muttered, "Fine, but only if Emily's in too." Emily was an easier sell. When Claire called her at college, Emily squealed. "You found the book? No way." "Way," Claire replied. "And I was thinking maybe we could all cook something together." "Like Grandpa's lasagna?" "Exactly." "I'm in," Emily said immediately. "I'll even make dessert." The plan was set. Saturday evening, one last family dinner at their grandparents' house before it was sold. Claire arrived first, her arms full of groceries. The house was colder than she remembered, the silence pressing against her like a weight. She busied herself unpacking ingredients, trying to chase away the loneliness. Ben arrived next, his tie loosened and his usual air of impatience softened by nostalgia. "This feels weird," he admitted, setting a bottle of wine on the counter. "Like stepping into a time machine." Emily burst in soon after, her energy filling the room. "Let's get cooking," she declared, her arms laden with bags of apples and cinnamon sticks. The kitchen came alive as they dove into the recipe. Ben took charge of the sauce, grumbling about the ridiculous number of steps while secretly enjoying the rhythm of chopping onions and garlic. Emily mixed the ricotta, sneaking spoonfuls when she thought no one was looking. Claire layered the pasta, following Grandpa's handwritten instructions to the letter. "Remember how he used to whistle while he cooked?" Emily asked. "And how he'd yell at us for sneaking bites," Ben added with a rare smile. Claire laughed. "And how he always made us feel like the table was the best place in the world." As the lasagna baked, the siblings sat around the kitchen table, sipping wine and sharing stories. It was the first time in years they'd really talked about work, school, their memories of Grandpa. After dinner, as they cleaned up, Emily flipped through the recipe book and gasped. "Guys, look at this!" She pulled out a folded piece of paper tucked into the back cover. Claire opened it carefully, revealing Grandpa's familiar handwriting. "To my family, if you're reading this, it means you're together, and that's all I've ever wanted. These recipes aren't just food, they're a way to stay connected. Promise me this. Keep cooking, keep laughing, keep loving, and never forget, the real secret ingredient has always been each other. Love always. Grandpa Art." The siblings sat in stunned silence, tears streaming down their faces. "That settles it," Claire said, breaking the silence. "We can't let this be the last time." Ben nodded. "Let's make it a thing. Once a month, one recipe from Grandpa's book." Emily grinned. "Dibs on hosting next time." From that night on, the siblings rebuilt their family, one meal at a time. Over months and years, the gatherings grew, with parents, cousins, and eventually their own children joining in. Grandpa's recipes became a bridge, connecting generations and keeping his legacy alive. Though the house on Maplewood Lane was sold, its spirit lived on in every shared dish, every laugh, and every moment of togetherness. It had been 5 years since the siblings discovered Grandpa's recipe book and rekindled their bond around his cherished meals. The monthly dinners had evolved into a cornerstone of their lives. Claire, Ben, and Emily took turns hosting, each gathering becoming a blend of tradition and modernity, filled with laughter, wine, and the occasional debate over whether Grandpa would have approved of their creative tweaks to his recipes. But on a warm summer evening, as the siblings gathered at Ben's house for their latest dinner, Emily revealed something that would take their family journey in an entirely new direction. "Guess what I found last week," Emily said, holding up an envelope. "What is it this time? Grandpa's secret stockpile of chocolate?" Ben teased. Emily shook her head, her eyes sparkling. "It's a letter Grandma May wrote to Grandpa. And it's not just a love letter, it's about the recipes. And there's something else, something big." The room fell silent as Claire took the letter, her heart pounding. The letter was dated 1965, written in May's elegant handwriting. Claire began reading aloud. "Art, my love, as I watch you perfect your spaghetti sauce for the 100th time, I can't help but think about how much joy you bring to everyone around you. Your food is more than just a meal. It's a gift, a way to make people feel loved and connected. One day, I hope these recipes can go beyond our little family, maybe a cookbook or a small cafe where people can experience the same magic we share at our table. No matter what happens, promise me this. Never stop cooking with your heart. Yours always, May." The siblings stared at each other, the weight of the letter settling over them. "She wanted the recipes to be shared," Claire said softly. Emily nodded. "And I think we should do it. Let's make her dream come true." Ben leaned back in his chair, skeptical. "How exactly are we supposed to do that? None of us are chefs." "We don't have to be," Emily replied. "We just have to believe in the same thing they did, that food brings people together. Maybe it's not a cafe, but we could still share the recipes somehow." The idea sparked excitement, but also unease. Claire loved the thought of honoring their grandparents' legacy, but worried about losing the intimacy of the recipes. "Once we put them out there, they won't just belong to us anymore," she said. "What if it changes how we feel about them?" Ben, ever pragmatic, raised logistical concerns. "If we're talking about a cookbook or even a blog, it's not just about sharing recipes. It's about branding, marketing, dealing with criticism. Are we ready for that?" Emily, undeterred, said, "This isn't about making money or being perfect. It's about fulfilling Grandma's vision. If we don't try, we'll regret it." The siblings debated late into the night, but as the conversation wore on, it became clear that each of them, in their own way, wanted to see their grandparents' love and legacy reach beyond their family. After weeks of brainstorming, they decided to start small, a blog called Love on a Plate, where they would share Grandpa's recipes alongside family stories and tips for creating meaningful moments around the table. Claire, with her knack for storytelling, handled the blog posts. She infused each recipe with anecdotes about their grandparents, weaving a narrative that made readers feel like they were part of the family. Emily took charge of photography and styling, transforming their kitchen creations into visual feasts. Grandpa would laugh if he saw me sprinkling basil like it's pixie dust, she joked. Ben, initially reluctant, used his business acumen to manage the logistics, from securing a domain name to promoting the blog on social media. Their first post featured Grandpa's lasagna, complete with a photo of the original handwritten recipe. Within days, comments poured in. "This reminds me of my own grandparents' cooking. Made this for my family tonight. It was a hit. Please share more. Food like this brings people together." The blog's popularity grew steadily, attracting not just home cooks, but also food enthusiasts and even local media. A journalist from a lifestyle magazine reached out, asking to feature their story. The article, titled "A Family's Recipe for Reconnection," introduced readers to the siblings, their journey, and the heart behind Love on a Plate. The exposure brought an unexpected offer. A local nonprofit that worked with underserved communities wanted to partner with them to host cooking workshops. "This is bigger than us now," Claire said during one of their planning meetings. "Grandpa's recipes could help people in ways we never imagined." They began holding monthly workshops at a community center, teaching people how to make simple, comforting meals. The sessions became more than cooking lessons. They became spaces for connection, where strangers turned into friends over the shared act of creating and eating. Years later, the blog had evolved into a full-fledged platform, with a cookbook in the works and partnerships with other organizations. But at its heart, it remained a labor of love, a tribute to the man who believed that food was the best way to say, "I love you." One summer evening, as the siblings gathered for yet another family dinner, Emily brought out a new dish she had been experimenting with. "It's not in the book," she said, setting it on the table, "but I think Grandpa would approve." The dish, a fusion of their family's flavors with modern touches, was a hit. It symbolized how the siblings had taken their grandparents' legacy and made it their own. As they clinked glasses and dug in, Claire smiled. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Ben nodded. "And it all started with one little book in a dusty attic." Emily raised her glass. "To Grandpa and Grandma, and to the family they built, one meal at a time." 3 years after launching their blog, Love on a Plate, the siblings had settled into their new roles as accidental ambassadors of family, food, and connection. The blog had grown beyond their wildest expectations, boasting thousands of readers who eagerly awaited each new recipe. The cookbook had finally been published, and their workshops continued to bring joy to local communities. But on a quiet Monday morning, Claire received an email that would take their journey in a direction they never anticipated. The subject line read, "Your grandfather's recipes changed my life." The email was from a woman named Sophia, living in a small town in Italy. It began, "Dear Claire, Emily, and Ben, you don't know me, but I feel like I know you. I stumbled across your blog during a very dark time in my life. My mother had passed away recently, and I was struggling to find a reason to get out of bed each day. One night, I found your post about your grandfather's lasagna. The story reminded me of my own mother's cooking and the warmth of our family dinners. I decided to try the recipe, and as I cooked, something shifted in me. I felt connected, not just to my own memories, but to yours as well. I've since started hosting Sunday dinners with my neighbors, many of whom live alone. Your recipes have become the centerpiece of a tradition that's brought our little community closer than ever. Thank you for sharing your family's love with the world. With gratitude, Sophia." Claire read the email twice, her eyes welling with tears. She forwarded it to Ben and Emily with the subject line, "We need to talk." That evening, the siblings gathered at Emily's apartment. The table was piled with takeout, their usual post-workshop ritual. "So, what do we do about this?" Claire asked, holding up a printout of Sophia's email. "What do you mean?" Ben asked, between bites of pad thai. I mean, this proves what we're doing matters, not just here, but everywhere, Claire said. There are Sophias all over the world. What if we could reach more of them? Emily's eyes lit up. You're thinking international. Ben raised an eyebrow. That's ambitious. We barely have time for what we're doing now. But think about it, Claire said. What if we could create something bigger, like a global network of people using food to connect? Cooking clubs, community dinners, even virtual workshops. Emily clapped her hands. We could call it the Family Table Project. Ben sighed. Okay, but how do we fund something like this? We can't exactly quit our jobs and travel the world. Maybe we don't have to, Claire said. We could start by partnering with other bloggers, chefs, and organizations who share our vision. We've already got the platform. Let's use it. The Family Table Project began as a modest campaign, a series of blog posts and social media challenges encouraging people to host dinners and share their experiences. Within weeks, the hashtag Family Table began trending, with stories pouring in from across the globe. A retired teacher in Japan shared photos of her students learning to make grandpa's apple pie. A refugee community in Germany posted a video of their first potluck, where they blended cuisines from different cultures. A family in Brazil shared their version of grandpa's spaghetti, swapping out basil for cilantro. But with success came challenges. As the project grew, the siblings found themselves stretched thin. Claire struggled to keep up with the blog while coordinating interviews and managing partnerships. Emily, now working as a full-time photographer, found her schedule packed with requests for workshops and events. And Ben, still juggling his corporate job, became increasingly frustrated with the logistical demands of their growing enterprise. I can't keep doing this, Ben admitted during one particularly heated meeting. We need help. Emily frowned. We've always handled everything ourselves. It's what makes it personal. But at what cost? Claire said. Grandpa wouldn't want us to burn out. Maybe it's time to bring in some outside support. The decision wasn't easy, but eventually they hired a small team to help manage the project. Though it felt strange to delegate, it allowed the siblings to focus on what mattered most, preserving their family's legacy. One day, while reviewing submissions for the Family Table Project, Claire came across a video from an elderly man in New York. His face was weathered but kind, his voice carrying a hint of a familiar accent. Hello, he began. My name is Antonio. I am 85 years old, and I live alone. I found your website through a friend, and when I saw your recipes, I felt like I was looking at pieces of my own life. Antonio went on to explain that he had grown up in the same neighborhood as Art and May, and they had been close friends. Your grandfather taught me how to make my first meal when I was just a boy. I still use his recipe for tomato sauce. It's the best I've ever had. Claire played the video for Ben and Emily, their jaws dropping in unison. This is incredible, Emily said. We have to meet him. The siblings arranged a visit, traveling to New York to meet Antonio in person. He welcomed them into his modest apartment, where the smell of simmering tomato sauce filled the air. Sitting at his kitchen table, Antonio shared stories of their grandparents they had never heard, how Art had once dreamed of opening a restaurant with him, how May's laughter could brighten the gloomiest day, and how their love had inspired everyone around them. Before they left, Antonio handed them a small notebook. This was Art's, too, he said. He gave it to me when I moved away. I think it belongs with you now. The notebook contained early drafts of Grandpa's recipes, complete with sketches and notes about his dreams of sharing them with the world. It was a reminder of how far they had come and how much further they could go. With renewed purpose, the siblings expanded the Family Table Project into a nonprofit organization. They partnered with schools, shelters, and community centers to teach cooking as a tool for connection and healing. They launched an online archive of recipes and stories, inviting people from all walks of life to contribute. 1 year later, on the anniversary of their grandparents' wedding, they hosted a global virtual dinner. Families from over 50 countries participated, cooking Grandpa's recipes and sharing their stories. As Claire watched the live stream, filled with faces and voices from around the world, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Grandpa and Grandma would be so proud, she said, tears in her eyes. They would, Ben agreed, raising his glass. To Art and May, the heart of our family and the inspiration for so many more. The Family Table Project had reached heights the siblings never imagined. It had become a global movement, with a documentary in the works and a growing network of people using food to connect, heal, and celebrate. But just when Claire, Ben, and Emily thought their journey had come full circle, a package arrived at Claire's door that would flip everything they thought they knew upside down. It was an old, weathered box addressed to the children of Art and May. Inside, wrapped in delicate tissue paper, was an envelope marked "For the Right Time." Along with it was a faded photo of Art and May, standing outside a rustic, unassuming building with a handwritten sign that read, "Art and May's Kitchen." "What is this?" Emily asked when Claire called her and Ben over to look at the contents. "I don't know," Claire said, flipping the photo over. On the back, in May's handwriting, were the words, "The dream we almost lived." Inside the envelope was a single key and a short note. "To our dear grandchildren, if you're reading this, then you've discovered the dream we had to leave behind. This key opens the doors to something that once meant the world to us. If it feels right, we hope you'll find a way to bring it back to life. Love, Grandpa Art and Grandma May." The siblings were stunned. They had always known their grandparents had dreamed of sharing their love of food, but they had no idea they had taken steps toward opening a restaurant. "We have to find this place," Claire said, her voice firm. "But how?" Ben asked. "That photo could have been taken anywhere, and who knows if the building still exists?" Emily squinted at the picture. "Wait, look at the signpost in the background. That's the same style as the ones in the old town near Grandpa's childhood home." The siblings packed their bags and headed to the small town where Art had grown up. They spent days scouring the area, asking locals if they recognized the building in the photo. Finally, an elderly man at a corner cafe pointed them to a boarded-up property at the edge of town. "That used to be a diner," he said, "closed down decades ago. But the kitchen, everyone said it made food that felt like home." When the siblings arrived, their hearts raced. The building was in rough shape, but the faint outline of Art and May's kitchen was still visible above the door. Claire inserted the key into the lock, her hands trembling. It turned with a satisfying click. Inside, the siblings found a treasure trove of their grandparents' dreams: menus, handwritten recipes, sketches of table layouts, and even business plans. But as they explored further, they uncovered something that left them shaken. In the back room, tucked into a folder, was a letter from Art to May. "May, I'm so sorry. I know this was supposed to be our dream, but I can't go through with it. The cost is too high, and I can't put us at risk. I hope one day you'll forgive me. Love, Art." "What does this mean?" Emily asked, her voice breaking. Ben sighed. "It sounds like Grandpa backed out at the last minute. Maybe it was money, or maybe it was fear," Claire finished. "He was always practical. He probably couldn't bear the thought of it failing." The revelation stung. The siblings had always viewed their grandparents as fearless dreamers, but this letter revealed a vulnerable side to Art they hadn't known. After much deliberation, the siblings decided to honor their grandparents by reviving Art and May's kitchen. They pooled their resources, launched a crowdfunding campaign, and enlisted the help of the local community to restore the building. The campaign went viral, with supporters from around the world donating and sharing their own stories of how the recipes had impacted their lives. During renovations, they uncovered another surprise: a hidden compartment in the floorboards containing a bottle of wine and a note from May. "Art, I know you're scared, but no matter what happens, I believe in us. This dream may not come to life the way we imagined, but our love will always be the greatest thing we've built. Forever yours, May." Months later, on what would have been their grandparents' 70th wedding anniversary, Art and May's kitchen reopened its doors. The menu featured their classic recipes, along with new dishes inspired by the global family table community. The grand opening was a celebration of food, family, and connection. Guests included locals, online followers, and even Antonio, the family friend who had inspired them to dig deeper. As the night drew to a close, the siblings stood in the middle of the bustling restaurant, overwhelmed by the love and joy surrounding them. "I think we did it," Emily said, her voice thick with emotion. "Not just for Grandpa and Grandma," Ben added, "but for everyone they touched, everyone we've touched." Claire raised a glass to Art and May, to their love, their courage, and their belief that food could change the world. The crowd erupted in cheers, toasting to the couple whose dream had finally come true. The legacy lives on. Art and May's Kitchen became more than a restaurant. It became a symbol of hope and resilience, a place where people from all walks of life could gather, share stories, and create memories. The siblings continued to honor their grandparents in everything they did, knowing that their legacy wasn't just in the recipes, but in the love and connection those recipes inspired. And as the last guest left that night, Claire glanced at the family photo now hanging in the entryway. "We did it, Grandpa," she whispered. "We finally brought your dream to life." The faint aroma of tomato sauce seemed to linger in the air, as if Art and May were smiling down, their hearts full, and their dream finally realized.